Good morning. It is Friday at 11:30. This is Jason Dean coming at you live from Film Fanatic headquarters. Hope everyone's doing good. The weather's been really nice. It's been unusually warm again, so we're back in this warm climate all of a sudden, which has been pretty nice. I usually always judge it by. Um, I have this thing of during the winter when I'm working on music stuff, I have to take my immediate electronic equipment that I use in my practice space. I have a separate building on my property, which is a studio. It's combination. It's a combination of like a rehearsal space and a practice space. I teach lessons, teach some drum lessons out of it, and then I have my equipment in there that I practice. Um, my drum set stuff and my electronic stuff. I have a PA and all those good things. I have that, and it's used as a band rehearsal space, and then I use it for my own workshop. So, but during the winter, I have to take in. When it starts getting cold, I basically take in my electronic stuff into my house because it doesn't like the cold weather, especially when it gets down to the teens or even lower. So I usually take in my stuff. But now I was doing that, but now it's all of a sudden gotten warm again. So I've been leaving my stuff out there again. So it's pretty unusual, but I'll take it for as long as we can, as long as it will keep coming our way. So yeah, I want to thank everybody again for supporting this channel. It's been really fun cranking out the shows here. I've been seeing lots of movies. I always do, always watch movies pretty regularly, but I've had a little bit more time. I've been on vacation, so I've seen a few extra films. So, and I've been going to more trips to buy movies, so that's been really great. One place that I was kind of bummed at. There's this really cool place in Thomaston, Maine, and it's called Hoffman's. It's basically kind of like a head shop slash Goodwill, and they have all these, or at least when I was going a couple of years ago, I started going there, and it's right in Thomaston, Maine. It's right on the central the main drag, and basically it's a shop that had all these collections of uh, amazing. They had this amazing movie selection. They had your bongs and your tie dye T-shirts. They also had these weird furniture oddities, toys, and just these weird collectible things that they had and dolls. It was a pretty odd shop, but they had this huge DVD and Blu-ray section in the shop. And what had happened was back probably 3 or 4 years ago, Walmart used to have this giant bin inside their shop, the one in Thomaston. And they have like a super Walmart there. And what they used to have there, they used to have this giant, huge bin. It was like, it was like this giant pool. And they used to have it filled with Blu-rays. And they had a pretty decent music selection too. They used to sell a lot of the remastered versions of a lot of albums that were, had come out in the 70s and 80s. I've gotten a bunch of mostly metal stuff, but I've gotten a lot of albums through them. At least back then, where they had a lot of reissues and remastered albums of like classic Van Halen and some classic Metallica albums and a bunch of other albums. But they had these remastered versions that were on CD, and they were really good prices, and they were marked down, and they came with all these new packages, as well as all of these DVDs they used to have, and or I should say Blu-rays. They had this is a giant bin of Blu-rays, and they had a lot of really great movies. And I used to go there. I'm not a huge fan of big box stores or Walmart. I don't like to shop there, but I was going there a lot at one point because I was down I was down in Thomaston doing a bunch of work and like recording. Was doing actually some quantum recording projects. This past album or past two albums that we've done for quantum, we recorded the last two albums here at my place. My friend Mike, who I work with, has a recording studio in Thomaston, and it's called Cat Tracks, and it's in Thomaston, Maine. It's in his house in his basement, and that's primarily where we've done all the recording, and then we've done a bunch of other recording projects there. The last year or two, he upgraded his equipment, and now he has the studio, but then he also has a mobile setup, so he can take his studio really anywhere, and it's pretty awesome. It's really compact. He can kind of fit it into any kind of space, any kind of room, and particularly around the stuff that we do, it's relatively easy to set up because everything is going direct into uh, the recording. The basically the tracking is done, or everything is plugged in direct. So there isn't the case of where we have to use lots of external mics and all these things. So it's pretty easy as far as that goes. So we did the last two albums here, but back then when I was going, down to Thomaston a lot, I was doing all the recording at his studio, and then we would spend a couple weeks or a few months doing that, and then I would go down for the subsequent months that would follow. I would go down on weekends to his place. So I was going down to Thomaston every week, and it's about an hour drive. So I started on my drives. I popped into Walmart one day, and I saw that they had all these movies, and I couldn't believe it, and they were really cheap. So I started buying all these movies, and I got in this habit of stopping in there all the time. And then one day I went in there after going in there for a few months or over a span of a couple of years. I went in there and they were all gone. Like everything, all the movies were gone, and they had this, even their music section was uh, maybe half to where it was, and it was pretty lame and disappointing. And then I was again down in Thomaston a lot, and I had some time. I think I had gone down to Thomaston to do some recording, but I got down to the area a little too early, so I had some time to kill. So I was in town walking around, and I came across this place called Hoffman's, and walked in there, and I was just like, wow, like this is awesome. And they had all of these great Blu-rays, a lot of great DVD movies. They had a lot of obscure movies that I was kind of looking for. One of the movies I picked up there that I was super excited about was Near Dark, which is this really great cult vampire movie that I really love, and it's a pretty underground, underrated movie. But they had a really great edition of that on Blu-ray, and I snagged it up, and I bought a bunch of other movies there. But I remember when I went in there, and I was really excited to discover this place, and they had really good prices. Talking to the owner, I found out that they said basically they bought all of the movies from Walmart. They bought all their Blu-rays, and so they were selling them all at their shop. So so it was great. So I was going in there, and they were even cheaper there. So I was going in there. I went in there maybe two or three times, and it's been a couple of years since I went there, maybe a year. And then I was trying to go back there again, and I remember driving down there, and they were closed. And it said online that they were open, so I drove down there and they were closed. And then I was down there again fairly recently, and they had again said they were open, but then when I got there, they were closed for a couple of hours, and I was there in Thomaston to play a gig, so I didn't have the time to go back there. So I was pretty bummed. And then yesterday, or a couple of days ago, I saw that they were open, and I called them, and I was like, "Okay, you guys open?" And they're like, "Yep, we're open till 6." So I was like, "Great, all right." So I went down there, and no movies. All the movies were gone, and I was like, "Oh man, bummer." And what had happened was they basically they got rid of all their movies. I don't know what they did with them, but they got rid of all of them because they just weren't selling. So that was disappointing. But it was a cool place. It was great. while it lasted. I gotten some great movies there. And now, I still go to, as far as local places, Goodwill in Rockland is the place I always go. Probably I'll be down in Rockland today, so I'll probably stop in there. I always go there to hit up movies. I'm actually going to a movie tonight to go see this really great movie, uh, Silent. I can't remember the name of it. It's a new movie called Violent Night, and I've heard a lot of good things about it. I've heard it's super gory and super funny. It's like a tribute to Die Hard, and I've heard it's like a kind of a, I don't know, modern day classic in the making. So I'm super excited to see it. I almost saw it in a theater a couple weeks ago with a friend, but then we ended up going to see Avatar 2 in the theater. We saw it in 3D, which I was glad to see in 3D, but I'm more excited actually to see this. So I'm going to be seeing that tonight, so I'll be down in Rockland, so that'll be probably cool. But anyway, so I usually go down to the Goodwill in Rockland quite a bit. That place is awesome as far as their movie selection. They I went there earlier this week when I found out the Hoffman's was closed, and it was right after Christmas, so the place was wiped out. So I'm hoping they'll have some more stuff in there tonight. Uh, but good place. I've gotten tons of Blu-rays there. I've gotten pretty much. I have a pretty good. I've done shows on my love of Marvel movies, all the superhero movies, and most. I have a pretty good collection. I have just about all of the ones that I really want. I have most of those films. I have most of the Avenger movies and Spider-Man and Captain America movies, the Thor movies. Those are pretty much my favorite. I love a lot of other ones, but eventually I'll buy some more. But I have a pretty good selection right now of all the Marvel movies on Blu-ray, and I've gotten all of those through the Goodwill in Rockland. And I've also gotten quite a few other movies, but they have a really good selection there for Blu-rays. I'm always surprised. So, yeah, but and then I'm always like popping in the Belfast one. That's pretty good. Every now and then I find something there, but the one in Rockland's really great. That's definitely the best place. But it's hard finding used Blu-rays locally. It's getting harder and harder. So I think eventually I don't know if it's gonna just go away. It's gonna be like maybe trying to track down a cassette or CDs. It's kind of sad, but when I go to Bull Moose, that's where I spend most of my money, and that's where I buy newer releases of older films. And I've noticed even there, sadly, that the selection is still fantastic, but it seems like it's kind of dwindling down compared to where it was only a couple of years ago when I started buying at a higher rate a lot of these exploitation movies. And I noticed uh, that it seemed to be kind of dwindling down as far as the selection that they have in the Waterville Blue Moose. So I hope that's not a sign of things to come. I'm hoping it's just because I've gone there quite a bit, and so I've been buying things, and there's not as much turnover in a short amount of time. I usually space it out, so fingers crossed that it won't be changing. And there's always ordering stuff online, but I don't really like to order things online very much. But one of the last films that I bought at Goodwill was again another film I've never seen before, and it's from 1977. It's a British sci-fi horror exploitation movie called Prey. And this movie is totally bonkers. It's one of the craziest movies I've seen in recent time. Never heard of it. Uh, didn't know anything about this movie. Totally bought it on a whim, and it's just spectacular. It's super bizarre. The whole story is bizarre. The ending, especially the last act of the movie, is just completely bananas. And it's so utterly the thing that I was so taken aback by this movie, Prey. And it's a British movie. It came out in 1977, which is hard to believe. It came out on Vinegar Syndrome. Vinegar Syndrome is one of the premier companies out there that reissues all of these great exploitation movies. The thing that I was so taken aback by this movie was just how so utterly original it was. The story is unlike anything I've seen in recent time, and that it combines, all of these great elements of, it's sci-fi, it's got the horror element, it's got the slasher element, it's got the whole like it's super sleazy, it's got the whole sex exploitation thing going on. It's funny. It's really kind of a comedy, even though it probably wasn't meant to be a comedy per se, but it's really funny. It's it's got all of these kind of interesting plot twists and shifts in the story around the characters. It's actually the cinematography is amazing. It basically takes place in the English countryside in this like gorgeous house that's owned by these two lesbians. And the whole story is so bizarre because it's basically centered on this like man-eating alien that eats like human flesh that crash lands on Earth. And the first half of the movie is him going on this like kind of rampage, like killing and eating people. But then he ends up kind of befriending these two women that own this beautiful house on the countryside. And he ends up like kind of striking up a relationship with them. And they're this lesbian couple, and one of the women is, probably in her 40s or 50s, and then the other woman that she is, that's her lover, is uh, in her early 20s. So there's like this huge age gap between the two of them. But they befriend this guy who is this essentially a man-eating alien, and he ends up kind of like living with them for a while. And there's all these weird sexual things that happen. There's all these strange tensions that build between the three of them, and it just builds and builds and builds to where it comes to this completely bonkers, insane ending where you're just like, oh my god. And it's super sleazy. It's really gory, but it's a great story. I love how just utterly original it is. It's really great acting. The cinematography is pretty fantastic. Um, I was so surprised by this film. Like I said, it came out in '77. Basically, the story is centered on a lesbian couple are unaware that their new house guest is a carnivorous extraterrestrial. I mean, that's just crazy. And it was directed by Norman J. Warren, and it stars Barry Stokes, Glory Annan, and Sally Faulkner, Eddie Stacy, and Sandy Chinney. One Easily one of the most unusual movies I've seen probably ever, and definitely recently. It's it's bonkers. It's totally bonkers. And it was directed by Norman J. Warren. And I never heard of this film, like I said. It comes with the packaging is awesome. The Blu-ray transfer of this film is amazing. It's directly taken from the original film print. Other films that he's directed, Norman J. Warren, who directed Prey, Satan's Slave, Her Private Hell, Gunpowder, um, so many of these films. Like I've never, Her Private Hell, a whole bunch of these movies I've never heard of before, and I'm super eager to check out any of these films on this guy's in his list. There's a really great interview with him where he he talks about all the production uh, elements that you know brought this movie together, and like basically describes that this whole film came about. Like he basically described it as a situation where the stars aligned. They had no budget, and but everything just worked out in their favor and in his favor because of the circumstances that they had no budget and they were really incredibly tight as far as what they could do and what they couldn't, what they, could possibly do. He did another movie called The Terror, which I've never heard about and never heard of this director before. I'm super excited to check out any of his other films. Spaced Out is another film he did, which came out in '79. So apparently he was a pretty prolific director. He's still alive, and he made a whole bunch of these like wild gonzo exploitation movies. Uh, and again, these are all films I've never heard of before. And Semnioid is another film he made, um, which looks like just a completely insane sci-fi movie. Super exciting to check out. That's one of the things I love about these new discoveries with all of these films and these directors because I've never heard of this film before. Never heard of Norman J. Warren as a director. So it's a new discovery, and now when I go back to trying to buy some new movies down, in the future, that will he'll be a name that will be kind of etched in my head a little bit. So I'll like seek him out. I've done that a lot with a lot of directors. Some directors I've known about, but some directors I didn't know very much about. Lucio Fulci, who I've known, that was one director I've really tried focusing on as far as acquiring a lot of his movies. A recent one is Jess Franco, a Spanish director, just amazing. I had seen a bunch of his films growing up throughout the years, but many years had passed. I kind of forgot about him, so I've been rediscovering all of his work again, and that's just been fabulous. So the more and more I dive into a lot of the stuff, it opens up all these other avenues and worlds to discover all of these other directors and all of these other films that are just so obscure and so strange. And it's just it's amazing that these films have such a longevity and also a second life, really. A lot of these filmmakers, especially the films that came out during this period, during the '70s and '80s, like there were their hits. Like there were films that came out during the exploitation times that were in their circles or in that genre that were considered to be hits. But then there are also films and other directors that put out many films, but they just weren't they went into more of a place of obscurity. Films like Herschel Gordon Lewis's Blood Feast. That was a huge film for him in that exploitation world. Other films like William Luswig's Maniac, another film that was a huge film, even commercially. But there was 10,000 other movies that came out that same year that were all made in that vein, but didn't really see the light of day. So it's just amazing, like all of these other films that just didn't get that notoriety or get any kind of attention now, have this room for the appreciation for these films to grow. So it's just amazing. It's just great. So yeah, Prey, 1977. Yeah, just one of the most one of the strangest and one of the most insane movies I've seen in a while. So bizarre and just so amazing. 1977, what a good year. This package is just terrific. I highly recommend checking this out. Don't bother trying to watch it online or any of these things. I would just take a chance and buy it because if you like the strange and unusual. This will definitely this will definitely satisfy you to no end. It did for me, and I'm very much looking forward to checking this film out more and more in the future. So this is Jason Dean. I want to thank everyone for their support for this channel and to help it grow and to help it continue to reach more people. I really appreciate people checking out these videos. And also, if you like the stuff, please subscribe to it and like any of the page. Please comment. More and more folks have been commenting on the shows, which has been great, because that's, for me, is the best part. My favorite part of doing these shows is mostly centered on doing the interview segments. I love that. That's something that's going to be happening in the future, so stay tuned for that. That's my favorite part of doing this whole channel. And then the other part is I love interacting with people who appreciate these films. So commenting and all these things, that's great, and that's been happening more. So please feel free to engage with me on some of these strange films. So this is Jason Dean. So hope everything is good and you have a great day, and we will see you next time. Peace.